What a guan, what a guan. Welcome to TDI TV, and I am the Dirty Immigrant. Now, I've been watching the news lately, and I've noticed that it seems like people are pitted against each other in this world, and it looks like it's deliberate to me. Like, for instance, people are pitted against each other by politics, systems, religion, and country. Now, it's easy for human beings to end up in a predicament like that. I'll give you a perfect example of me when I was living in the island. Now, we had a revolution, socialist revolution they call it, and it lasted from 1979 to 1983. Now, during that time, there was a lot of anti-American rhetoric on the island because, of course, the country had gone and became friends with Castro. So lots and lots of anti-American rhetoric going on. Now, ideologically being isolated there, after a while you start believing it. And it's easy to believe it because you're not exposed to ordinary people living. We weren't ordinary people living in America. Back then the tourists were pretty uppity. And then there were medical students. But like the ordinary working class Americans, we were not exposed to them. Now, fast forward to these times, this is what's going on. You have, it's pretty much the same thing that's going on. You have Islam, you have Christianity. Now, let's look at it this way. Lots of people in this country consider themselves Christian, but most aren't practicing Christians. I would venture to believe that most people over there in the Middle East or Africa or wherever who claim to be Muslim aren't exactly practicing Muslims. Most people claim to be something, but they don't practice it on a daily basis. Because they're too busy working to make ends meet, put food on the table, trying to find peace and some kind of serenity in this crazy world. You know what I mean? So, here's what's happening. The ordinary people here aren't exposed to the ordinary people there. So they don't know each other. All they know is what religious leaders tell them, what the government tell them, whatever leader with his own agenda tells them. We don't know each other. You know what I mean? When I moved from Grenada to America and I started to meet Americans, working class Americans, I realized, number one, they work from paycheck to paycheck like I was doing. I landed in Kentucky, not in New York, not in big shot New York. But I landed in Kentucky, working class people, working from day to day. Me coming up here with the mistrust of Americans and thinking that they're going to harm me in some kind of way. After I started meeting Americans and started talking to Americans and ordinary people, I started to look at them from a human perspective. And I started asking myself, why do I dislike them? They didn't do anything to me. Whatever the issue is with governments. Governments around the world do that to us. They make us think that a whole country of people is creating an issue. They make us think that a whole religion is creating an issue. The same thing that Christians are doing here, making people think that Islamic people, every Islamic person is a bad person, it's the same thing they're doing there. So there's a natural fear. So if you fear something, it's going to be a lot harder to try to understand it. Most leaders and religious leaders and even teachers, they tell you stuff from their own cultural, ideological, and religious perspective, which would make the next side look biased. So here's how simple I think it should be. We should start looking at each other as human beings before anything else. Because remember, everything you believe, you were born into. You're already a human being, which makes us not so different. You know what I mean? A system is a system. They like you to believe that capitalism is better, communism is better. All it is a small group of people telling a population how to live. That's all systems are. Do they work? Obviously not. Look around us. Ain't nothing working. There's wars, there's craziness. A lot of that have to do too with some people thinking their system is better than others, so they're trying to force it down other people's throat. The simple point I'm trying to make here, and I want to make this short, is this. Maybe, just maybe, if we get to know each other, then we wouldn't be so quick to want to kill each other. We wouldn't be so quick to think that the way we believe is better than the other person. Because generally speaking, under every system or religious beliefs, whatever you want to call it, there's just people living, wanting peace, wanting to be happy, and wanting to get along in this life. So before you cast judgment and cast a judgment on a whole race of people or a whole religion of people or a whole nation of people, try to get to know them. We have the internet. We could use that as a tool to get to know each other. Because it's harder to kill your friends than it is to kill your supposed enemies. So think about that for a minute. Knowing each other might solve a lot of this problem here. Way too much miscommunications. Governments around the world, period, all governments, they just spread propaganda to further their own agenda. So everything you hear, take it with a grain of salt. Here I am, I know all these good people here. I would have never known them if I had stayed isolated, thinking, oh, this is a horrible place, they did this, they that. You know what I mean? Most people who talk crap about black people don't really know black people. Yeah, they have black friends, but they don't really know black people. They don't really know Muslims. Muslims don't really know Christians. And not as Muslims or Christians or black people, as human beings. So think about that as you go along during the day. Stop casting judgment. Thank you for listening. And remember, always walk in peace, people.